Welcome to the Secret Underground Laboratory Recovery and Salvage, where rude mechanicals do magic. Hello, I'm Bronze Age, Director of the Secret Underground Laboratory Recovery and Salvage. And today we're going to be rewiring a very heavy and very big chandelier. This fixture started life as a gasolier. The word chandelier comes from an Old English word which basically means candlestick. So when they switched over from candle-lit chandeliers, they started calling them gasoliers. I think the word was first used somewhere around 1849, 1850, but gas ceiling lights had existed for at least 30, maybe 40 years by then. Now, you have to be a little careful when you're talking about gasoliers because I've seen a lot that were actually always electric, but made to imitate gas lights when they were brand new. This one, however, I think really is a gasolier. Now, I'm pretty sure this is a true gasolier because it has functioning gas valves on each arm. This one can't be closed completely because there's a wire running through the pipe. This hanging hardware is a fairly recent addition, at least within the last 100 years or so. It was added so after it was electrified so it could be hung from the ceiling. Originally, this pipe here screwed into another pipe in the ceiling, and that was the gas service. The gas flows down this pipe all the way down to this piece, which is called a chandelier body. From here, all the arms branch out to the gas burners. Now this body has a hole drilled in it right there. There's another one on the other side exactly opposite it. And I'm not really sure what that's all about. This may have gone to feed some other kinds of gas lights that were mounted in here, little small ones. I'm not sure. It's difficult to say when this gasolier was converted to electric lights. The hardware in here is probably less than 50 years old. I have had some that were probably wired very early in the 1900s and were certainly due for a refit by the present time. The threads that we use in most modern lamps, certainly the ones in the United States, look like this, called a 1/8 inch iron pipe, and it was originally used for gas lights. And as lighting converted from gas to electricity, the lighting industry used the same threads. If you take apart a lamp sold today at any department store or Walmart or wherever and take it apart, you'll find these threads, sort of a little fossil of the Industrial Revolution. And unfortunately for us, modern electrical sockets will fit right onto these threads. One of the big problems of working on a chandelier this heavy is finding safe ways to rig it so that you can handle it and move it around. I'm pretty much at the limit of what I think my rail trolley can safely handle. So all I'm going to use this for is moving it and reduce the risk of breaking something, which would be very bad. Very, very bad. Once I have it in what I think is a safe and stable position, I can take the lower plate off and see what waits for me inside this chandelier body, which is going to determine how much work all of this is going to be. It can't be that bad because I know someone has already been here before me, and I'll have to figure out how they did it. But I really think it all comes out from the bottom. This looks like a nice professional job. Much better than many I've seen. Although I do think we can do a better job than holding it together with yellow tape. On a scale of 1 to 10 for the difficulty of rewiring this chandelier, I'm going to rate this about a 7. There's two problems with it. The first is this arm here, which is cast. The inside of the casting is going to be rough, and they tend to narrow down like a bottleneck when you're coming to the nipples on the ends. The second is the gas valve. I know from experience that the hole through the gas valve is about a half of what it is for the rest of the pipes. This means I've got to take the gas valve apart, do some drilling, maybe some machine work, so that I can get a wire to go all the way through it. Now, ordinarily, with no gas valve here, what I would do would be simply solder my new wire onto the end of the old one and just fish it through. Because of the small hole in the gas valve, I'm not going to be able to do it on this one. There's a practical reason these wires are so small. European lighting is 220 volts as opposed to American 110 volts. This goes back to the days of Edison and Tesla and Westinghouse, when electric lights were replacing gas lights. There's no need to go over all that now. The result is, Europeans can get the same brightness from a light bulb with half the electrical current flowing through the wires. This means the wires can be small enough to go through a gas valve, where wires used in America simply won't fit. Brass is fairly soft and easy to drill, but it's so soft that a very large chip can get peeled right off of it, which jams the drill bit. This means there's no practical way to hold this in your hand and use a hand drill on it. It's just simply going to come loose and spin around and hurt people. And with it being tapered like this, there's also no practical way to clamp it in a vise without distorting it or denting it somehow, and then it's not going to fit back in the chandelier. So to solve that problem, I've cut this little block here with a taper in it that matches the valve plug, and I just shove this in here, and I can clamp this in the vise, and that will hold everything nice and tight so I can drill the hole through it without hurting myself or breaking something expensive. After you've wired enough chandelier arms, you come up with a lot of clever tricks for getting the wire back through the arm, and none of them work all the time. None of them work on all the chandeliers, and some of them don't work on every arm on any chandelier. But one of the ones I have come up with is a piece of surgical tubing. It's more flexible than the kind of tubing that you can get at the hardware store for your aquarium or something like that. And what I've also done is put a little short piece of beaded chain on the tip there to help it go around the rougher edges. And to tell you the truth, It's just a matter of fiddling and fussing and fiddling and fussing and twisting it around until it just pretty much in the dark right there lines up with that hole and then pops out the end of that nipple. And I'm not going to bore everybody by making them watch it. Okay. I didn't time that. It would be much too depressing. Now I feed the surgical tubing down the gas pipe, and with a little more wiggling and finesse, should be able to get it to come out in the chandelier body, where there is, of course, another bottleneck. And there we go. Now, I install the arm with a nice bit of blue thread lock, because this piece has to be pointed straight up when it's done. And that might not be the tightest position. I can screw it in like this. So coming up, there we go. And that will work. And I can be pretty confident that it's not going to come loose. The really critical part is using this stuff to pull the wire through the arm. Now, it's really not possible to get that tight a connection between the tubing and the wire, but you can get it pretty snug. And the point here is to pull at one end and push at the other, because you don't want to create enough tension that the wire can be pulled out of the tube, and then you have to start all over again. So a little bit of wiggling, and we're down to my mark. And that is one arm wired, and 7 more to go. And if they all go in this easy, I'll consider this a pretty smooth job. Pulling the wires went pretty well. No catastrophes or any broken parts, which is always good. Now it's time to turn to the treatment, which is how we're going to turn this into electric lights. We start off with this piece, which is called a candle cup, even though this chandelier was originally a gas burner and then electric lights. It screws down, and I have this piece, a coupler. I'm putting that on, and what I've done is I've ground a couple of little flats on here, because down in there I won't really be able to get a good grip with the pliers. But just drop it on, run it down with my fingers, and I grab the pliers and give it a good twist. That blue thread sealer will keep it nice and tight. Then a short piece of pipe nipple will give me a mount for the socket. We're using 6-inch adjustable sockets because that's what the customer has requested. And there we go. I have all the sockets in place, all the wires are run, and now it's time to make a few points about this kind of work. First, gas lights were designed and engineered to be gas lights. That means that their main concern was keeping the gas inside the lamp until it got to the burner where you could burn it. Um, Many of the gas fixtures that I have worked on throughout the years, I've often wondered how they didn't kill everybody in the house as they slept, or how they didn't burn the city down at the same time. But what it really means is that they're not designed and engineered to have wires running through them. So when you convert or rewire one that's already been converted to electrical, you need to be very conscious of any sharp edges, any kinds of places where wires might get pinched when you tighten it down. I have seen gas fixtures which were apparently converted early 1900s, something like that, and they were just hazards. I mean, they could get somebody killed because even though they worked fine when they were new, stuff gets loose, people tighten it back up, pieces get twisted, um, and eventually the wires would break through, touch something critical, and the person who goes up there to change the light bulb gets shocked or worse. Second point I want to bring up is that we always tin the wires. I'm going to slip this piece of cardboard back here to improve the background contrast. But tinning the wires means putting a coat of solder on these loose stranded wires. And the reason this is important is because when you put a stranded wire underneath the screw, it splays out like this, and basically it's not really possible to get it tight enough from a good electrical connection. On top of that, it is also the National Electric Code that any stranded wire under a screw terminal be tinned. And for this purpose, you use rosin core solder, always rosin core because the other choice is acid core. What the rosin does, which is inside the solder, is it melts and it will clean the wire off so that the rest of the solder, which in this case is tin and zinc, will stick to the wire. They've quit using lead in solder some time ago. Wire that is sold for lights, lamps, and that sort of stuff that comes joined together in the middle always has one side which feels smooth to the touch, and another side which has ridges. And this corresponds to the screws on the socket. Here you see a brass or copper colored screw, and here is a silver screw. The smooth side always goes on the copper screw because it goes to the center terminal, and the other one goes to the shell. Now this is much more important on table lamps where the switch is right next to the socket, but it serves the same purpose. That if somebody were to reach up and try to change a light bulb when the actual lights were turned on, if they touch the shell, they're not going to get shocked. However, if these wires were reversed and the smooth wire was attached to the shell, yes, you will get shocked, or as I like to say, or worse. So that's a critical part of safe and good lamp wiring, chandeliers included. The last part of the electrical work is the connection between the trunk wire and the arm wires. Now, when it came into the lab, the original connection was simply the wires twisted together and then covered in yellow tape. That's a bad practice and just simply not acceptable. In the lab, all connections are soldered together and then they are covered with Shrinkwrap tubing, which is a special kind of plastic which draws up tight when it's heated. It's also resistant to cuts, scrapes, and scratches, so that when it gets shoved up in here, amongst all these sharp edges, I don't have to worry about something getting pierced and creating a shock hazard. Now it's good to remember that this chamber in here is where the gas was distributed out to all the arms. And this is the way it was sealed. These screw threads here, and we can see a little bit of the old sealant still on there. I'm not sure what they used. We have to remember this was before the days of any kind of synthetic rubber, not vinyl, neoprene, and that sort of thing. And I think this is a very fine clay mixed with linseed oil. Don't really know though. That goes on just like that, and it would be tightened down really tight. Then a few ornamental pieces. And a finial. And this chandelier is put back together. This is Bronze Age, director of the Secret Underground Laboratory, and I thank you for sticking this far through with the video. And I do appreciate you watching it. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. And we'll be back next week with another video. Again, thank you very much.